Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 14, the story of King Vena. Text number 20. Tasmim stushte kima prapyam. Tasmim stushte kim aprapyam. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Loka sapala hyetasmin. Loka sapala etasmin. Loka sapala hi etasmai. Haranti balamadritaha. Haranti balimadritaha. Tasmin stushte kima prapyam. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Loka sapala hyetasmi mai. Haranti balimadritaha. Tasmim stushte kima prapyam. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Loka sapala hyetasmai. Haranti balimadrataha. Tasmim stushte kima prapyam. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Loka sapala hyetasmai. Haranti balimadritaha. Tasmin stushte kima prapyam. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Loka sapala hyetasmai. Balimadritaha. Tasmim stushte kima prapyam. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Yotasapala hyetasmai. Harantim balimadritaha. Matajis. Tasmim stushte kima prapyam. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Loka sapala hyetasmai. Haranti balimadritaha. Matajis. Tasmin tushte kima prapya. Jagatam Ishwareshware. Loka sapala hyetasmin. Haranti balimadritaha. Word for word, tasmin, when he, tushte, is satisfied, kim, what, aprapyam, impossible to achieve, jagatam, of the universe, Ishvara Ishvare, the controller of the controllers, Lokaha, the inhabitants of the planets, Sapalaha, with their presiding deities. He, for this reason, etasmai, unto him, haranti, offer, balim, paraphernalia for worship, adritaha, with great pleasure. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we are to read 20 to 22, but I'll read the translation and purport and then we'll continue to 22. Translation, you can repeat after me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by the great demigods, controllers of universal affairs. When He is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. When He is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. For this reason, all the demigods, presiding deities of different planets, as well as the inhabitants of their planets, take great pleasure in offering all kinds of paraphernalia for His worship. Purport. All Vedic civilization is summarized in this verse. All living entities, either on this planet or in other planets, have to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by their respective duties. When He is satisfied, all necessities of life are automatically supplied. In the Vedas, it is also stated, Eko Bahunam Yo Vididhati Kaman, taken from Katha Upanishad 2.2.13. From the Vedas, we understand that He is supplying everyone's necessities. And we can actually see that the lower animals, the birds and the bees, have no business or profession, yet they are not dying for want of food. They are all living in nature's way, and they all have the necessities of life provided, namely eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Human society, however, has artificially created a type of civilization which makes one forgetful of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Modern society even enables one to forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead's grace and mercy. Consequently, modern civilized man is always unhappy and in need of things. People do not know that the ultimate goal of life is to approach Lord Vishnu and satisfy Him. They have taken this materialistic way of life as everything and have become captivated by materialistic activities. Indeed, their leaders are always encouraging them to follow this path, and the general populace, being ignorant of the laws of God, are following their blind leaders down the path of unhappiness. In order to rectify this world situation, all people should be trained in Krishna consciousness and act in accordance with the Varnashrama system. The state should also see that the people are engaged in satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the primary duty of the state. The Krishna consciousness movement was started to convince the general populace to adopt the best process by which to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus solve all problems. We'll continue reading text 21 and 22. Can someone reduce the volume, please? Text 21. Tam sarva lokamara yagna sangraham trayimayam dravyamayam tapomayam yagnai vichitray yajato bhavayate rajan swadeshan anurodam arhasi. Translation. Dear King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with the predominating deities, is the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices in all planets. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the sum total of all the three Vedas, the owner of everything, and the ultimate goal of all austerity. Therefore, your countrymen should engage in performing various sacrifices for your elevation. Indeed, you should always direct them towards the offering of sacrifices. Text 22. Yajnena yushimad vishaye dvijatibir vitayamanena sura kala hare svishta sutushta pradishanti vanchitam taddela delanam narhasi virachestitam. When all the Brahmanas engage in performing sacrifices in your kingdom, all the demigods who are plenary expansions of the Lord will be very much satisfied by their activities and will give you your desired result. Therefore, O hero, do not stop the sacrificial performances. If you stop them, you will disrespect the demigods. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachalam bhangam langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurute Dharanam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Shriram Hariom Tatsat. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing with the wonderful activities of King Vena. Actually, we've heard of his activities so far, but actually the more bewildering and disappointing mentality of Vena will come to light in the next couple of verses. Because you see here that the Brahmanas, being very broad-minded, understood the situation of the state. And you would have heard from the previous Bhagavatam speakers how they installed Vena because a blind uncle is better than no uncle. In that particular position, Vena was able, he had the potential to be a great king. For his father was a great king, and his forefathers were great kings. And more importantly, he had great counsel. And that's very important, because with the association of the Brahmanas, he'd be able to come to the proper standard of being a king. But unfortunately, Vena did not take that to his benefit. And so you'll see very soon that Vena let the position come to his head. In other words, the position, the pride that comes with position, the worship and the fame that came with the position, he let that increase his false ego even further, even if though whatever he had wasn't enough. So the Brahmanas decided to give him good counsel. And you'll see this in even in Prabhupada's pastimes in this world. Many a time he will find his disciples slightly slip from the path of devotional service. But Prabhupada would never take them out of their particular position of service. Rather, he would correct them and give them another chance. And you'll see that in a lot of Prabhupada's pastimes. In one particular place, it's mentioned that a sannyasi, he couldn't continue his position in his ashram. And he returned his danda to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada teared up and told, just see how he respects the ashram. That he could not take to it fully, but he's returned the danda out of respect. But unfortunately, at that particular point in time, many of this particular sannyasi's godbrothers decided to phone the other temples and let everyone know out of goodwill, so-called goodwill. And Prabhupada chastised them that just see, now the situation is that even if he wants to come back, he can't come back because of the embarrassment. So Prabhupada was extremely sensitive in Vaishnava dealings, and Prabhupada knew what was needed at what particular point in time. This is one side of Prabhupada's extreme compassion. On the other hand, there's Prabhupada explaining to a disciple in a letter that, you see, it would be within your good interest to come back to this Krishna consciousness movement and take up your position. And Prabhupada explains that he'd like to see him back. But Prabhupada says, anyway, this is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. And being Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, if you don't take up the responsibility, somebody else will come and do it. Somebody else will come and do it. So in this way, this Krishna consciousness movement is not a person-centric model other than Srila Prabhupada. Everything is running under Prabhupada's mercy. So whatever position one may have, whatever service one may have, one should be grateful for the service. One should be grateful for the opportunity to serve. Because if you think about it, we come to Krishna, even if you take a step back, you come into the material world with nothing, right? You take birth, you don't have anything. Krishna provides you all necessities. This is just on the base material platform. When you come into Krishna consciousness, you also have nothing. You are insignificant. There is nothing you have. We have nothing when we come to Krishna consciousness. And in that position, we seek out the association and guidance of devotees, and we follow very sincerely what they say, right? Because we've been fried by the material nature, and we know we don't want to go back there. So then we take up devotional service very sincerely and follow. But then, unfortunately, due to our past conditionings, baggage, we take it for granted. So then when Krishna sees that at a particular point in time, this person's ready to take up the preaching movement, and Krishna gives some sort of responsibility, position, service, and then we take it very personally to our head that just see how great I am. Just see the wonderful position I've been put into to control and monitor the devotees as if I am Krishna himself. And then that's the beginning of fall down. There is a pastime, it's very similar to this pastime of Vena, very similar to the mentality of Kamsa. You'll see, Vena, Kamsa, same mentality. Both of them persecuted the Brahmanas, thinking that they themselves, Hiranyakashipu, same position. And you'll see in this pastime of Nahusha. Nahusha is an ancestor, or I think he's either the father or grandfather of Yayati Maharaj. And it's mentioned that Nahusha was such a pious king that in his lifetime he became Indra. That was the level of piety he had. And it's mentioned that at that particular point in time, I believe Indra was cursed to become a pig. That's the particular pastime. And so the throne of heaven was empty. So then everyone decided, by the council of the Brahmanas, of course, in the celestial kingdom, they decided to find the next best option until Indra came to his senses and came back. So then they brought Nahusha. And it's mentioned that when Nahusha came, he was so sincere. He bowed down to everyone. He came to the throne. He touched the throne to his head. He sat down on the throne, folded palms, and he was coronated. And he started to rule the heavenly kingdom under the guidance of the Brahmanas, of course. Over a period of time, the pride got to his head. The position got to his head. The worship came to him. Although he forgot where he had come from. He had forgot the position he was at before he took up the position of Indra. And what happened? He started to boss people around. He started to take control. And in that particular position, the demigods started to get disturbed. That just see, he thinks he's the next Supreme Personality of Godhead. He thinks he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Look at his position. And he went to such an extent that he thought he was so qualified. He thought he was Indra, that he could go and try to, entice Sachi Devi, the wife of the previous Indra. And he constantly made advances towards her. And she constantly denied being a person of character, saying that you are not my Indra. The previous Indra is still alive. And what is this adharma? What is this religious practices you're performing? And of course, Nahusha, he did not care. So Sachi Devi went and complained to Agastya Rishi. She complained to the she complained to Agastya Rishi. And Agastya Rishi told her that don't worry, his time of fall down has arrived because of the pride he has built. He said, don't worry, you tell him that I will court with you only if you're able to get I think it's the eight sages, is that right? The top sages of the heavenly planets. Is 8 or 7? Saptarishi. So that you get all 7 of them to carry get them
to come carry your palanquin. And if you're able to get them to carry your palanquin and bring them to my doorstep, then we will see. And this Nahusha, out of blinded by this lust, ordered the Saptarishis to carry his palanquin. And it's mentioned that when they were carrying, it's Agastya Rishi is slightly shorter than all of them, it's mentioned. And at that particular point in time, oh no, I'm confusing with different pastime. When the Saptarishis were going, they were going very slowly. And Nahusha started to chastise them and berate them and offend them verbally, saying, you're all useless, what's the point of all your austerities? You can't even carry a palanquin, blah blah, so on and so forth. And it came to a point where his offenses reached their limit, and the Saptarishis cursed him, that because you're so lusty and you're so attached to your pride and prestige, may you become a snake. And he fell from the heavenly kingdom as a snake. And that's when Brahma went to get the previous Indra and then brought him back to his position. And you see later on in Mahabharata, when the Pandavas were in their Agatavas, where they were in the forest, incognito, having lost their kingdom. Bhima, he ran up one of the heavenly mountains in search of the golden lotus. And in that particular point in time, he meets Nahusha, the snake. And then, Nahusha explains to Yudhishthira Maharaj, comes and bails him out. So the story is it's a different story, it's a tangent. But basically, Nahusha explains in that situation, I got proud for no reason whatsoever. And if we think back in our lives and we see the pride we have, actually, what is it that we're proud of? We can only be proud of being the servants of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. That's pretty much the only pride we can have. Because we don't really possess anything. It's been given to us. We are borrowing even this material body, because we can't take it to the next life. In fact, it's constantly changing as we speak. What do we actually possess? So here, with that in mind, you can understand the principle of who's really the proprietor. Does anyone know the verse Prabhupada quotes often in relationship to who's... Yes. Bhoktayam yagyatapasam, that's right. Suridam sarvabhutanam nyatma mam shantim rishtiti. Yeah, okay. There's another one, particular verse Prabhupada quotes. Very important verse. Come on. That Krishna is the proprietor. Ishapanishad, Ishavashyam idam sarvam yat kincham yat jagatyam jagat tena taktena bunjita kamagrita kasya sviddhanam. The one before that. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnam. I can't remember the second verse now. There it's mentioned that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. Yeah, so it is this verse. Isavasyamidam sarvam yat kincham jagatyam jagat. Prabhupada uses this verse to explain that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, but those who take everything, those who take proprietorship of what belongs to Krishna, they're only known as thieves. And if you come to that section of Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna tells Arjuna there as well that stena saeva uchyate. In that section he explains that Brahma sent forth all the creatures and explained, be thou happy, Brahma or Lord Vishnu, be thou happy with sacrifice. And so the demigods and all living entities performed sacrifice for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But for those who don't perform such sacrifice, what ends up happening? Brahma says that they're no different from, Krishna says they're no different from thieves, because it doesn't belong to them. And this is a very important point. Whatever we have in our possession is simply borrowed. It's given to us by Krishna and the devotees. It comes, same thing with anything subtle in terms of, or transcendental in terms of our service, in terms of our position. Everything is just simply meant to help us become more servant of the servant of the servant of the devotees. Because if you think about it, what does Prabhupada say when he sees his disciples? He says that you have been all sent by my spiritual master to help assist me in his service. Prabhupada didn't think that, I'm the guru, I'm meant to control, and Prabhupada's mood was that here are all sincere disciples persons who need to be trained up in devotional service sent by my spiritual master. So Prabhupada took his service as an opportunity to serve other devotees. Whereas Vena, the mentality of King Vena, as you'll see, is that he will begin to chastise the Brahmanas and say that actually I am Vishnu. Everything should be offered to me. It's because of me everything is coming. And that's what's being condemned by Srila Prabhupada in this purport. And it's condemned regularly by Srila Prabhupada. It begins in the first canto where Prabhupada says that material sense gratification is now the standard of civilization. Previously, what was the standard of civilization? The standard of civilization was Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. That was the standard of civilization. Varnashrama Dharma, sacrifice. Yagnatat Karmano Vishnu. Yagnatat Karmano. What's the next line? Anyatra lok karma bandhana. Yeah. So that's the standard of civilization, that sacrifice has to be performed for the pleasure of Vishnu. And that's what Varnashram Dharma is centered around, for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. But Prabhupada is saying now to maintain our standard of civilization, we have to create complex nations, complex communities, just to satisfy our senses. Whereas Varnashram Dharma is a very simple system, meant to bring about a simple way of living. But even Prabhupada says that now that process is very simple, but the application is very difficult. It's a very difficult and unfortunate situation we live in now. Because to practice Varnashram Dharma requires a proper governance, a proper government. But we lack that. And Prabhupada says it's now, what does he call democracy? He calls it demon crazy. Because it's simply, Prabhupada says Shudras electing another Shudra. That's all it is. Whereas the original system of monarchy, not even monarchy, the original system of Varnashram Dharma was centered around Dharma, the principles given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, what do you expect in a society that's simply running on material sense gratification? There's constant tension. Prabhupada says there's a constant strain of hot and cold wars. Hot and cold wars. Constantly we're fighting one another for what we deem as our share of sense gratification. And that's what we bring into Krishna consciousness as well. Forgetting that we came to Krishna consciousness with nothing, and by the mercy of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath we have everything, beginning with the association of devotees. So we'll come more into the purport. There are a few points or themes Prabhupada touches on. The first one is that Prabhupada touches basically on satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That it's a very important point Prabhupada is saying here. You can see that Krishna is satisfying everyone's necessities, right? And you can see the example in animals. Prabhupada says here, they have no business or profession. You don't see the bird put on a coat and suit and go to work. You don't see, in fact, sometimes when you're chanting in the car park or in the restaurant, or if you're just walking outside, you'll see all these animals just going about their business, right? And you see all these people walking, business coat, pants, shirt, walking, running for their bus and train and everything. And you just see a, sudden wild turkey just go across the street, all the cars coming and it just walks through. They just don't care. They have their own thing to do. And Krishna's maintaining them. But here we have taken up that position that I shall maintain myself, I shall maintain my family, I shall maintain my community, right? But we shouldn't mistake that from not performing our prescribed duties. You see, we have our prescribed duties, we follow them, but not at the cost of our spiritual advancement. And that's the balance. And by performing our prescribed duties, we are satisfying Krishna. And the problem nowadays is that what really is my prescribed duty? Right? Am I a Shudra? Am I a Vaishya? Am I a Kshatriya? Am I a Brahmana? Shall I self-label myself as something? I am in between Prabhu and Mataji, right? But nowadays it comes down to simply guidance. How did one know one was a Kshatriya? How did one know one was a Brahmana? When they went to Gurukul, the Guru distinguished and identified it. it's mentioned that the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas went to Gurukul. They were twice born. In fact, so that meant that they were given the instructions by the spiritual master in Gurukul. And it was the duty of the Guru to find out what their particular nature was. Of course, they came from a particular lineage, they came from a particular family. So it was very easy to find in that sense. But it was mainly based on one's activities and qualities, not one's birthright. As Prabhupada says, even in this day and age, the son of a doctor is not considered to be a doctor. They have to go through the proper training and develop the proper qualities. So in the same way, Gurukul was there to filter out the useless ones and put them in the right category. That's why you'll see sometimes people will refer to the other person as a Brahma Bandhu or a Kshatriya Bandhu, a friend of the Brahmana or a friend of the Kshatriya. And it's not in a good sense. It's a derogatory term used to tell people that you assume yourself to be in that position, but actually you're not. Right? So you see them, they'll hurl these comments in war between the Kshatriyas. They'll call them, you are simply Kshatriya in name. And the Kshatriya will not back down out of their chivalry. And they will fight back. They won't be ashamed. So in that sense, you'll see Gurukul, the spiritual master. So in this way, in our current situation, we can find proper guidance with our spiritual master. We can find proper guidance from our Shiksha Gurus. It is not that we go to the spiritual master and ask the spiritual master, if I invest in this particular business and if I invest in that particular business. Rather, we ask the spiritual master what is the best position to be in to advance in Krishna consciousness. That is a more appropriate question to ask. When it comes to particular details of our duties or particular business activities, then we ask devotees in that field. That's very simple and straightforward. Like Prabhupada says, a businessman will call another businessman for lunch and they'll discuss business, right? And one will learn the art of business from the other. So in the same way, we associate accordingly. And it requires proper guidance and discrimination. So in that way, we can understand what is our real duty in life and how our material activities simply support our spiritual activities. The second thing Prabhupada mentions in this purport is what I mentioned before, the artificial nature of our material society. Our material society is founded on sense gratification. So when devotees go out to preach Krishna consciousness, we shouldn't worry what the public have to say. Because they'll say one thing today and another thing tomorrow. Right? Prabhupada says to one disciple, actually the disciple came to Prabhupada and he argued with Prabhupada, that Prabhupada, you're going out and you're disturbing. Your disciples are disturbing the public by distributing these books. And Prabhupada says, what do you mean we're disturbing? You just see these big advertisements, right? What is all of that? That's not disturbance? No, you're pushing. And Prabhupada explains again, no, you see what these advertisements are not pushing? People, what does it say? Drink Coca-Cola, enjoy, right? That doesn't push people. You go from one end to the other city, what do you see? Coca-Cola everywhere, right? And what happens when you get to the end? Oh, I'm thirsty, I want Coca-Cola. That's not pushing. And then the disciple says, no, actually, your disciples are, you should not disturb the society. And Prabhupada says, what? So next, that if they ask you to dance naked, will you dance naked? It's a very valid point. If they ask you to dance naked, will you dance naked? No. So who are we here to please? What is our modus operandi? What is the goal? What is the aim of life? The problem is nate swarta gatam hi Vishnu durasaya yahir bahirartha manina ander yatander upaniyamanas tepi shitantra urudham nibadha. Prahlad Maharaj explains to his father of all people. He tells that you see the situation here is that people don't know what the goal of life is. And they're simply bound up. And they're following the blind. It's a very important point. They're blind what? Physically? No, they don't know what the goal of life is. They don't know where they're going. They simply think, okay, if I get the next moment of my life, I get a bit of sense gratification. My senses, the tingling senses are satisfied. Agitation is satisfied. The urges, they're controlled. They're reduced, then that's enough. I'll think about the next later. You only live once. I'll think about it later. I'll think about it later. And you see in the previous generation, their mood was the environment, we'll leave it to the next generation. First, we're thinking about advancement. We'll bring society to a certain standard, then we'll think about everything later. Similar principle everywhere in everyone's life. We'll think about the future later. If it comes, when it comes. But unfortunately, that's not the situation we're supposed to be living in. Narte swartagatim hi Vishnu. No one knows that their goal in life is Vishnu, satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the core duty. Krishna explains there swadharma. In Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada explains there are two swadharma. Has anyone read about this? The two swadharma? What are the two swadharma Prabhupada talks about there? It's in the purport. Krishna says one should do their duty, swadharma. Naturally you should think, what is my duty? And Prabhupada explains what your duty is in that purport. What is the swadharma? Explained there. There are two. Material duty and spiritual duty. I cheated you, I already said it. One's material duty and one's spiritual duty. One's material duty is varnashram dharma. Right? The varnas, the ashramas. And one's spiritual duty is to advance. In that sense, that would be the ashramas. The varna and the ashrama. Prabhupada takes it one step further and says one's spiritual duty is to transcend all of this and practice spiritual life. And that's to engage in Krishna consciousness. So then that comes to the main point again. Balance in one's life is that whatever activity we do should be for the purpose of advancing in spiritual activity, spiritual knowledge, spiritual service, in the service of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. So therefore Prabhupada explains Rupa Goswami's principle. That Rupa Goswami, I was reading recently actually, someone had mentioned that Rupa Goswami had 2 boatfuls of gold coins because of their service. 2 boatfuls. And it's mentioned 50% he gave to the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. 1 boatful of gold coins he gave to the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas for preaching Krishna consciousness. I don't know about the quantity, but you can understand. In their service of the Nawab Hussain Shah, they gave so much wealth to the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas to propagate Krishna consciousness. And I remember once I was in a class and I was asking someone, I was just studying and I had just done my internship or something, and I was asking, should I give 50%? And the devotee that was teaching was like, no, you're a student. Hold on, calm down. Ideally 50% when you're working a full-time job. So guidance, it's required. I remember in the same class I was asking another devotee, we offer everything we eat, should we offer water every time we drink? And he started laughing at me, and he said that you should at least remember Krishna is the taste of water. And I was like, what? So should I offer or should I not offer? So guidance, it's required. Anyway, coming back to the point. So here, what was the point I was making? 2 duties, yes. Sorry, I got absorbed in. So the 2 duties is that we should perform our spiritual activities with the assistance of our material activities. And how is that? We perform our material activities to get what? Let's be honest. Why do we go to work every day? To get money. Money, what is it? Prahlad Maharaj says, money sweeter than honey. Right? We go to get money. But we're looking for honey. And that's service of Radha Gopinath. So the money should be used in assistance of our service to Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. What is it? To maintain body and soul together. To make sure our family is Krishna conscious. To make our homes a temple, Vaikunta. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sings that his home has become Vaikunta and his family members are great devotees. He sees that because of his service attitude. And he was a magistrate in Orissa. The British made him a railway just to his home, from his home all the way to work. because they saw how potent he was. He would finish all his work, whatever was required, he finished within half a day. That's how spiritually, materially intelligent he was. And if you read his biography, I think it's called the Sixth Goswami. If you read, I was reading a bit of it. Sorry, Seventh Goswami. If you read that one, it's just mind-boggling. You'll just understand immediately, pure devotee. Completely beyond your imagination, the things he did. So, he taught by example, right? And his son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, taught by example in a different ashrama. How to practice brahmacharya ashram. How to be a celibate, how to be a renunciate. In that way. So, we can see by the examples of our acharyas that there is a balance that we need to strike as long as we're in the material world. And that balance may vary between devotee to devotee. In the brahmacharya ashram, vanapashya ashram, in the sannyas ashram, it's simply meant to keep the body and soul together. In the grihastha ashram, it's to keep the body and soul together of oneself and the family members, and to assist the other ashramas in propagating Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that's how civilization should be. Do you see anyone, Prabhupada explains this, do you see anyone open their doors and call out 3 times, is anybody hungry? Is anybody hungry? Is anybody hungry? Do you see that? No. But Prabhupada says that was the standard of Varnashram Dharma. The Grihasthas would do that before eating. Prabhupada says this in many lectures. So we can see where we are right now. Nowadays we're going out and asking people, do you have food? Do you have some money I can get some food for? So that's one aspect of the purport Prabhupada's explaining here. And Prabhupada's explaining again that modern civilized man is always unhappy and in need of things. Right? The civilization we should be in is that we should not be dying for want of food. We should not be dying for want of basic necessities, because Krishna will provide it anyway. But here we are, we've developed a society, we've developed a civilization that is so complex that we can't even easily accept what Krishna is giving us. The food Krishna gives us, we tamper it, we contaminate it, we alter it, hoping to get something better out of it, right? The shelter we get from Krishna, we again exploit it. Mother Nature. So then Prabhupada is saying here that do not know the ultimate goal of life, and they have taken this materialistic way of life as everything and have become captivated by materialistic activities. So what do we do? Prabhupada says here that the state should see that the people are engaged in satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just to recap, we talked a bit about how position brings pride, inflates our ego, as long as we don't cultivate the base quality of Krishna consciousness, is that we are Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayur Dasa Dasa Anudasa. Naham Vipro Narapati Napi Vaishana Sudra Naham Varnina Cha Grihapati No Vanasto No Vanasto Yatirva Kintur Podan Nikala Parananda Purnamrita Abdir Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayur Dasa Dasa Anudasa. That we are simply servant of the servant of the servant of the maintainer of the gopis, Gopinath. And that's the basic thing that we should be cultivating at all times. That's the base quality. And using spiritual intelligence, we'll always try to develop that humility to remain there. And it takes time. And everyone is of a different level of contamination. We are all trying to become purified in Krishna consciousness. So that level of maturity is required. And as you can see here, the Brahmanas had that level of maturity. They knew what Vena was doing. They knew it was wrong. But they thought, just like, they say in villages, that if there's a useless guy, get him married. Why? Because then he'll develop responsibility. That he has to take care of another person. Right? So in the same way, they thought, give him some service. Let him learn the responsibility and the weight of that responsibility. That should bring him to the proper consciousness. And so they didn't see that. So then they took another step to counsel. And as you'll see, they'll get fed up with him and they'll kill him. They'll kill him. Because they'll see there's no hope for this fellow. There's just no way. And why they kill him, you can come and understand that later. It's not because of what he was doing so far. You come and realize to what extent he had to come to. They had to come to tolerating him to pull him off his position. And then we talked a bit about the purport, the different themes Prabhupada's talking here. That current civilization is just simply an artificial civilization. It's no longer a simple set structure meant to help people achieve the goal in life. Rather, it's meant to bring people back to this mature world again and again and again. The very same problem, they are exacerbating. They're causing the same problem to occur again and again and again. So the real problem in in material life is material life itself. One should take to spiritual life. And so Prabhupada is explaining that the goal of material existence is what? Satisfying Lord Vishnu. So our lives need to become a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu. Now that we've come to Krishna consciousness, it's no longer about oneself. Because by satisfying Krishna, one naturally becomes satisfied. And that's a strong conviction we have to have. Shraddha Shraddha kahe Vishwas kahe Shuddha Nishchoy. Krishna Bhakti Kaila Karma Sarva Krita hoy. There's a strong faith that simply by performing Krishna consciousness, everything will be satisfied. Everything will be happy. Everything will be blissful. And this is what today's verse is all about. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by the great demigods, controllers of universal affairs. When he, that's Krishna, is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. And we pray every day in front of worshipping Srila Prabhupada, right? That the last verse is coming to head. Before that. Sarvapura Ash. Yeah, sorry. The previous lines are not coming to me. That we pray that by serving the lotus feet of the spiritual master, that all desires will be satisfied automatically, because he is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Serving him, pleasing him, means pleasing Krishna. This is the basic fundamentals of Krishna consciousness. And if we practice this, we'll be happy in Krishna consciousness. Like Prabhupada says, the process is very simple. The application may be difficult. That's because we make it difficult. If we just simply hear and follow, it'll be very easy. Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple and difficult for the complicated. So we just have to become simple. And what's the basic way of becoming simple? It's becoming purified in consciousness, and that's by chanting the holy name carefully and attentively. If we do that simple activity of chanting carefully, attentively, avoiding the offenses, naturally we'll progress. Prabhupada says, how much percentage of our Krishna consciousness advancement is dependent on our chanting? Does anyone know? 100%? What does Prabhupada say? 90%. Anyone else want to debate? 90% of our Krishna consciousness. What's happening? So 90% of our Krishna consciousness. So you can see how much we should be careful in our chanting. And our chanting is not just 2 hours in the morning. Our chanting is dependent on our activities throughout the day, our consciousness throughout the day as well. So you can see we have to be very responsible in our Krishna consciousness. And therefore Prabhupada hammers again and again. Our life is a sacrifice for the pleasure of Lord Krishna. He's given us everything, technically. What do we really have to sacrifice? We're like children, right? Prabhupada explains. The father gives the child some money to purchase a gift for the father, right? And the father will receive the gift, and the father will be happy, even though he's given everything to the child. Technically, it belongs to the father anyway, right? But the father enjoys that reciprocation. So being intelligent, we should understand every point in our day, every moment is an opportunity to reciprocate with Krishna. He is known as Akhila Rasamrita Murti, the embodiment of all pleasures. He is Rasaraj, right? So he is the enjoyer of all mellows. And all he wants from us is our devotion. Very simple. We practice devotional service for the pleasure of Krishna. We don't do anything which will harm Krishna, which will give Krishna displeasure. And of course, we're not perfect, right? We'll make mistakes. So we rectify them and move on. Take proper guidance and move on. Keep moving on. Don't make the same mistake again and again. So Krishna consciousness is very simple. Prabhupada's explaining the government's duty is to teach everyone to follow this simple process of Krishna consciousness. And life will be sublime. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Yes, Prabhu. They have their own planets, Prabhu. Each of these demigods have their planets. In fact, you go to the extent that the Lokapalas specifically have multiple residents throughout the universe. But they have their own planet, and each planet has their own inhabitants. Actually, it's even mentioned here. Yeah. For this reason, all the demigods, presiding deities of different planets, as well as the inhabitants of their planets, take great pleasure in offering all kinds of paraphernalia for his worship. So there's the sun god, and there's all these living entities in the sun planet as well, inhabitants there. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm. For what do you do your material duties? But if you think about it carefully, why do you go to work? What do you get from going to work? What do you get from taking care of your family? What is the purpose for doing those things? The purpose for doing anything in our life is for pleasing Krishna, right? So if we follow the basic material morals and principles, and on top of that practice devotional service, that's perfection. Because if you think about it, say for example, the most common thing we do when we come to Krishna consciousness is neglect family, because they're demons, as Prabhu said yesterday, right? Meat-eating demons, right? Was it? What is it? Meat-eating karmi demons, yeah. Yeah. So we put them in a bucket and we just neglect them. But actually, what have they done for us? They've brought us to a position in life to practice Krishna consciousness, knowingly or unknowingly, depending on their level of spiritual advancement, right? So then there should be, as long as we're in that capacity, there should be some reciprocation, some gratitude there. Same thing with work. We perform our work for the sake of progressing in our spiritual life. If we don't work, we don't have the money to pay our rent, we don't have the money to buy, cook, bhoga, prasad for Krishna, right? So then it's a very narrow-minded vision we go into, that we don't seem to see the bigger picture of things. So if you read regularly Prabhupada's books, naturally you'll develop, and this is the most easiest way, naturally you'll develop that actually Prabhupada wants this Krishna consciousness movement expanded. He wants to preach Krishna consciousness movement to everyone and anyone. It's not our birthright, it's for everyone and everyone, right? So then naturally you'll start to tailor or mold your life in such a way that you'll do, okay, material duties, I have to do that to maintain my body. Spiritual duties, I have to maintain my spiritual life. And now on top of that, I'll practice giving this Krishna consciousness to others because Prabhupada wants me to do it. So naturally what will happen is that your material duties will no longer be the prime focus of your life. It'll be one thing that needs to be done and it'll go on. Your spiritual sadhana will go on. your anxiety, your focus, your everything will just be focused on how I can increase this Krishna consciousness movement, right? I think Ghanshyam Prabhu mentioned this in the previous class, that if you take up this Krishna consciousness movement, your life will no longer be just struggling to be in Krishna consciousness. You will no longer just struggle to chant 16 rounds. Your struggle will be to give Krishna consciousness to others. Chanting, reading, work life, everything will just go on. Your consciousness will be to give Krishna consciousness to others. Naturally, everything will go on. Why? Because Krishna is taking care of all of that. How is Krishna taking care of all that? He's giving you the necessary energy to efficiently manage all of those things. Let it keep going on like clockwork, and helping you focus on preaching Krishna consciousness. Yeah? So that's one practical application. And if to come to that platform requires guidance. You need to know the balance. I have this much amount of time for this and that much amount of time for this, and you need to be practical with what time you have. Yeah? Hare Krishna. Anything else? Okay, we'll end here. It's 9 o'clock. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.